Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
I think the first time he came on the scene, he was dressed like a cop, right? I mean, he looked like a cop, and then he stuck his hand out, and this big blade came out of his hand and went through the guy in front of him, and you're like, what just happened here? That liquid metal dude, remember him from No, it wasn't Transformers, it was, oh yeah, the Terminator. Rising leaders need to be like that. You're gonna have to watch the whole video. Stay tuned. That's what we're going to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
There is a retreat coming up that I want you to know about. It's called the Story Power Academy Retreat. This Story Power Retreat is about focusing on your communication skills, taking them to the next level. Discover, develop, draft, deploy, and deliver some of the best stories you've ever learned. You're going to listen, create, connect, relax, and reflect around this beautiful lake scene in Granbury, Texas. It's a chance to rejuvenate and refresh and start over with some of the best training you can possibly imagine around storytelling, leadership, and communication. Join us, get away, and relax. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast and founder of Story Power Academy. The Story Power Academy has 2 veins, leadership and communication. Now, I know, you know, if you've watched this show for any period of time, those 2 are almost inextricably linked. It's almost impossible to be a great leader if you don't have good communication skills. And if you have good communication skills, you're going to become a person who influences others. I don't mean an influencer by nature of the label of the media tools that you get a bunch of eyeballs. Trust me, you can be an influencer, i.e. have a bunch of eyeballs, by renting a Lamborghini and pulling it in front of a house that you don't own, don't live in, don't know anything about, because it's a B&B, and you can make a lot of people think that you're famous. You could become an influencer like that. But if you become an influencer because you're a great communicator, because you think deeply, because you consider ideas and thoughts, and then you take those thoughts to a presentation style and a format that causes other people to stop and think about the way they live. Becoming a communicator like that makes being a person of influence impossible to avoid. Which then means, if you trust what John Maxwell says about leadership, it's influence, nothing more and nothing less, then by virtue of that you are a leader. Now the question is, how do you mature as a leader? How do you grow as a leader? There's a phrase that I hear kind of floating around these days called the rising leaders. Rising leaders in the military, we had a lot of them. I know guys that came into the military, and by virtue of the fact that you could get the next rank, a promotion to a higher level of authority, a more recognized leader, by doing the minimal amount of time in service, because there's a minimum standard. You have to be in the military for a certain period of time before you can advance to the next rank. But then you also have to take a test, and that test is about your job knowledge and about your military knowledge. And if you're a bookworm and you have no social life and you love to study, you can get to that minimum promotion date and be ready to take that test and advance in rank. And I had a couple of guys that joined at the same time that I did. They never went out. They never did anything. They were either in the gym or in the study hall, and all they did was promote, promote, promote. One of them came onto active duty 2 months after I did and was 2 ranks ahead of me by the time I finished my first term of service. Rank is what he wanted. Influence was what he wanted. Power was what he wanted. He was an E5 with a line for E6 by the time I got out as an E4. That's what he was after. He wanted to get all the way up in that rank and play the game. The challenge was he was a couple of years younger than me and significantly, in my opinion, less mature. He didn't have the relationship skills because he didn't hang out with people. He didn't like people. He just wanted that rank. Well, the problem is that responsibility of leadership, that role of leadership, it kind of comes with that necessity to at least care enough about people to lead them. That was an ironic dichotomy to me. But today I meet rising leaders who they have been given the title because they have an education, or they've been given the title, they've been given the opportunity to lead, they've been given even the people to lead because they've accomplished a couple of great things. We all know the sales manager who was the greatest salesperson on the team, got promoted to sales manager, and now you look at them as a manager and you go, yeah, they're not real good with people. They're too demanding. They have these high expectations. They don't know why everybody else can't do what they did when they were in that role. Well, maybe things have changed. Maybe stats have changed. Maybe processes have changed. Maybe demographics have changed. Maybe the economy's changed. Maybe it's just that the people you're trying to lead don't have the same skill set you do. They don't have the same natural ability of taking to focus on that in such a of skill that maybe you don't even have. Maybe you don't even, because you don't have the gift to pull it off. That's fine too. But here's the challenge that we find, especially with rising leaders. They get the skill, they get the abilities, they got the talents. I mean, they're young, they're vivacious, they've got the energy. They feel like they're bulletproof. They feel like I could do anything. And yet, they don't have the ability to negotiate at the same level. I'm not saying they don't have any negotiation skills. Trust me, if you grew up a middle child like I did, negotiation skills kind of come before your 10th birthday. If you don't learn how to negotiate, you're in trouble. Because the oldest gets away with everything because they've already figured out how to master the game. And the youngest gets away with everything because they've already figured out how not to be blamed. If you don't learn how to navigate and negotiate, you're going to lose as a middle child every time. Which is why you find a lot of middle children become salespeople and older children become CEOs, because they're used to getting their way and being in the command chair all the time. When you find someone who has both the natural skill and the ability and the energy and the opportunity to step into a role of leadership, but they don't have the negotiation skills or the navigation skills, or here's the hard one, the nurturing skills. Yeah, that is such a big word. We normally just put nurture right next to mother, right? Mother nurture. No, that's Mother Nature. Never mind. No, we do think of mothers as nurturing. They're compassionate. They're empathetic. They understand that there's a pain and they want to solve that problem. Leaders are usually thought of as the hard-driving, pressing, demanding, exacting, high levels of expectation. And yes, I know that there are mothers who are CEOs, mothers who run businesses that are just as demanding and just as exacting and have a high level of expectation. I've worked for a couple of them they demand everything of their team, but when they're at home, they have a different level of expectation. Maybe it's because they have a husband who's a strong leader at home. Maybe it's because they're just like, I'm going to turn that off. I'm not at work anymore. I can be the one to crawl around on the floor and cry with the baby. It's environmental. And see, that's kind of what I mean when I talk about you've got to be like liquid metal. I picture that obnoxious, not the T-100, the Arnold Schwarzenegger version of the Terminator, but the next model. When he came back, and I mean, they cut him in half and he remerged himself. He would transfer his being into the likeness of the environment that he was in. If he needed to be a cop, he was instantly a cop. If he needed to look like a construction worker, he instantly looked like a construction worker. The substance of who he was didn't change, but his ability to morph his character, his presence, his appearance was infinite. See, the challenge with a lot of leaders is that they want their substance to be so solid, so unmovable, that everybody else has to either conform and comply or get run over. And I do find it ironic that young leaders are often like a fullback. They're going to plow through, whether they're blocking or they're running the ball, or they're the lead in front of the guy running the ball. They're going to plow through. There's a time and a place for that kind of leadership. There's also a time and a place in your leadership when pragmatic protocol takes over. Now, what do I mean by pragmatic protocol? I've worked with a lot of different leaders who are rising, and by that I mean they're moving up in the world. They're moving to the next stage. And there are places as a leader that I've never been. Can't take you there. And I'm willing to tell you that I don't know. I don't know that space. I don't know those people. Now, I can help you become a better you. As a leadership coach, I'm going to dig way deep into you with the things that are going on in your personal world to make you a better person, to help you tell better stories about yourself and in the media, from the mirror to the media. But there are environments where me ushering you into that environment is not really going to take you there. I have a client right now that's moving up in their status in what they do. Now, they got decades of experience, phenomenal amounts of education and wisdom and knowledge. But these other realms are new to them. The protocol, the pragmatism of protocol is not really understood because it just wasn't necessary prior to now. But as those opportunities come, as those new realms of influence are opened up, as these new opportunities to go to the next level or 2 or 3 or 5 come along, it's very important to understand that realm. It's very important to understand who the players are and who matters. Now, I know, you know these people too, who they're willing to dole out the money to be in the room with the rich and famous. They're going to dole out the money to be in the room with the powerful and influential. And for the most part, here's what happens. They want to go to this place, to this event, to this island, to this getaway, to this mastermind, to this cruise. And it costs $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to go on this cruise. And they scrape together every dime they have and they put it on a credit card and they charge and they go and they think, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be in the presence of all these wealthy, famous, well-known people. And suddenly I'm going to get my breakthrough because I bought my way into this room. And to some degree, there is some opportunity there that just being in the presence of some of those influential people might give you your break. They might see the brilliance in you. They might discover you and go, my gosh, where have you been all my life? And this moment that you've invested in is your breakout moment. That is true. That does happen for some people. But for a lot of people in that environment, the ones that you've paid to come see, many of them are there because they've kind of earned the right to be there. And what I mean by that is they paid the dues. They paid to be on this boat, on this cruise, on this getaway many times in the past until they finally had their breakthrough, made their millions, got in that multiple comma club. And now that they are, some of them don't hold the humility to be able to look back to other people who are just now struggling their way up. And so they look at the people who have paid to get into this environment and they think, oh yeah, you're just getting started. I get it. Let's see if you're still around in a couple of years. And so there's the one group in the stateroom on the cruise and the other group on the poop deck, gathered around the hot tub, having too many drinks, staying up too late. They think they're networking. They're just doing the same thing they would be if they were at a bar at home. They're just enjoying the party, enjoying the people, and enjoying the company. That's fine. But the ones who are making the decisions, the ones who are truly leading everything that's happening here, they're in the stateroom or they're in the green room. And if you're not with them, then you're just their consumer. I know that hurts to hear. but I run into people all the time in my coaching practice who spend a season with me, and when they're done, they're like, why has no one ever told me these things that you're telling me? Why has no one ever taught me the things that you're teaching me? Why do I not get that anywhere else? Well, because I don't host a cruise and charge $10,000 to go on it so that you can mix and mingle with other people. We just did a training right here in this classroom for the last couple of days. People who've been in business and in leadership, politically, etc., for years. And they're influencers, and they're speaking on stages of 2,000 or 3,000 people on a regular basis. And they sit in this room where there's 6 or 10 people while we're recording a training, and they go, why have I never heard this anywhere? Well, because it's not the common fodder that the average person pays for, because I don't sell it to make you a celebrity. I don't sell it to make you feel important. I don't sell it to give you the idea that, hey, if you just do this one tweak, this one trigger, you're going to be a multimillionaire. I don't do that. That's not my role. My role is to squeeze your pineapple, put you under pressure and see what comes out, and then help you articulate that in a way that you can be a genuine influence in the life of others and truly transform the world. That's what I do. But when I run into a leader who says, I've paid $50,000 here and $10,000 here and $20,000 there. I had one who straight up told me, I've spent $139,000 over the last 2 years trying to be in the right room with the right people at the right time. And in 90 days, I got more out of the time that I spent with you to grow me, to grow my business, to articulate my ideas than I got from anybody else. Everybody else I paid wanted to make me a mini them, wanted to make me into a clone, and that's not what you do. And I said, that's probably the greatest compliment for my business I've ever had. I don't make mini clones. I train you with a skill set so that you can maximize the who that you are already. I believe that's my role. As a leader, that also means sometimes I listen to the drama that's in your life. And I help you to sort through what is real drama, what is your problem, and where do you need to draw some boundaries and go, wow, I didn't realize how much negative influence that person was having on my life. I've worked with people in their 50s and 60s, their 70s, who go, I've never heard that about attitude. So I didn't realize that when I commuted, I was communicating with an attitude. When I was trying to lead people, I was leading them with an attitude. And I've also worked with people who've been in management and been in leadership roles, and they're like, how do I get this to my people? And simultaneously, I've had salespeople say, how do I get the manager to get this? I'm like, look, the reality is the same on either side. Pragmatic protocol. Most people do not want to hear you tell them they're wrong. Save a few. There are oddballs. I fall in this category of I stand to be corrected. I don't like it, but I want it. I don't like to be corrected, but I want it. And I know that I need it. And trust me though, you better come with receipts, with facts, with books, with history, with knowledge, or at least with a great understanding to be able to say to me, okay, here's where I believe you're wrong, and here's how I can prove it. It's not a browbeating. It's not a beatdown, but I am probably going to push back because I came to my conclusions through effort. I have been wrong. I'm sure there's something that I'm saying right now, that I'm thinking right now that I'm wrong about, and I need to be corrected. And I will stand corrected when somebody comes to me and says, maybe you should look at it this way. Great. There was not to get religious, but there was a Bible verse that I've been listening to, that I've been hearing, that I've even taught around for probably 35 years. And in all honesty, I never really understood what it meant. I was asked to teach on it last summer, and I told the guy, let me not do that one, let me do this one, because I don't get that. It doesn't make any sense to me. I read it, I see what the words are, but it's a string of words that I just can't get my head around, much less my heart around. And then about a month ago, I heard somebody take that phrase, and they weren't even using the passage. They were using the meaning of another word that incorporated itself into that meaning. And I went, oh. It would be like me saying the roundness of the tire was so profound that I had to continue to study the tire. For someone who's never seen a car, doesn't know what a tire is, all of that means nothing. And that's kind of what this passage was. It was a string of words that, they were all words. I understand all these words. But I failed to put it in context. I'd never heard anyone teach on this random verse elsewhere, this random concept. And how do I put these two together? Look, if you're a leader, if you're a communicator, and you're unwilling to stop for a minute and go, huh, perhaps you're right about that and I've been wrong about this the whole time. You can have a really hard time moving into that next level, because that pragmatic protocol that says you're going to have to be able not just to promote yourself. Yeah, you got to be able to do that. And there's a balance between promotion and pride. There's a balance between confidence and pride. Confidence gives you the strength to do the things that you need to do without being beaten down by somebody else's opinion, because most of those are unqualified anyway. Pride causes you to do things you're not really competent at because your ego says I can do this, even though your capability, your competence, your actual skills and abilities don't measure up. That's a big problem. But a leader who's humble enough to say, okay, teach me better. Expose me to knowledge that I don't have. Put me in rooms where I can be challenged to grow to the next level. There's a protocol when you get in that room, and that is if you walk in with the pride and the arrogance that, hey, I'm here. I've arrived. Why is everybody not bowing down to me? And obviously I'm saying that in a metaphorical sense, but I do know people who've showed up in those environments that it's obvious they paid their way into that environment. They're not contributors, they're takers. They're here as consumers. It's not a bad thing. I go into rooms where I am the consumer. I have little to offer. I am paying my way because I need to learn. I need to grow. I need more access, more tools, more relationships, and I will pay for those things when they are valuable. Then there are times that I walk in the room and I realize I have as much to offer as anybody here. In fact, I have as much to offer of value as the people who are hosting this event and collecting money from everybody else. And immediately, I've got to take the responsibility for not letting that truth become arrogance. I've also got to be able to step back and say, look, I'm not being rude. I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be disrespectful. But the people in the stateroom and I are really more on an even plane than the people who are paying to pay attention to them. I would never presume to walk into a room with the president of a company and go, hey, you and I, we're peers. Or to walk into an event where there was someone like Tony Robbins teaching and go, hey, I'm going to go hang out in the green room with Tony. If we have a friendship like that, perhaps. But there are events that I go to that I pay to sit in the audience, and halfway through, whether it's my wife or another client who's sitting with me, they're like, I've heard you teach that forever. Why are you here and not there? It's not my season, it's not my audience, it's not my people. I'm totally cool with that. I'm going to learn everything else I can from them, and then I'm probably going to try to build a relationship we can collaborate later. My advice to young leaders is to recognize where you are in that process. It's not necessarily a food chain, but it is an evolution of sorts. It's an opportunity for you to say, I've got all the skills, but right now maybe it's raw talent. It's not fully developed into what it could be. And what I really need is a mentor or a relationship that I can collaborate with. That doesn't mean they're better than you. It doesn't mean they're necessarily smarter than you. It doesn't mean that they're a different class of human than you. That's not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about is sometimes these seasoned leaders They don't have the digital skills that you have necessarily. They haven't learned from AI everything that you've learned from AI. They maybe don't even know how to use AI. They still use it like a chatbot or a search box. That's fine. But they probably spent significant amount of time with other humans, good ones and bad ones, clever ones and divisive ones, ingenious and insane. And when a leader has kind of earned their ranks through that time, through that maturity, they've failed forward again and again and again and still not given up. That's a different kind of leader. That's not the kind of leader that bought their way into the room. That's the kind of leader who paid the price, and people respect them because they paid the price. They've earned their stripes, so to speak. Not just because they could take the test, but because they've done the hard work that took years and heartache, good relationships and bad, wins and losses to accomplish. If you're the kind of leader who's on the rise, if you're young in age or young in your leadership cycle, and I know people that are my age that are just getting started in their leadership world, that's fine. But as you move into that world, understand you need to maintain the substance of who you are, like our Terminator friend. You don't become something else, someone else, but you've got to learn to fit into the environment that you're in. And if you go only with your confidence and you go only with your arrogance and you go only with, look at me, I'm all that in a bag of chips and I'm here, I've arrived, chances are you're going to run headlong into somebody who isn't nearly as presumptive. They seem perhaps even demure, quiet. But their confidence comes from years and years of being tested, of failing and getting up again. They've been in the battle. They got some scars. Some of them are hidden. But if you'll listen to them and let your ego stay in check, keep the pride out and bring in that pragmatic protocol of saying, how can I serve you? How can I honor you? I mean, maybe I am the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company at this point, but let me tell you something. Even the founder sometimes has to step out when things change. Sometimes the CEO doesn't stay the CEO. Sometimes the CEO isn't a CEO ever again. They hold that title for a season, but pride always comes before a fall. When you meet someone who's kind of been around that block 1,000 times, they've got the battle scars, internal and external. They might speak a little slower. You might think they think a little slower. It's probably just they're thinking on 5 or 6 levels like a multi-level chess game simultaneously. And they're not asking their digital advice. They're not asking for outside input. They're recalling what they've been through, and they're about to give you some wisdom. It might seem slow, but it could save your life. It might be that you're doing all the right things, but in the wrong order. It might be that you've got the wrong players on your team, and because you move so fast to put friends and people around you that you like, that you want to do business with, people who say yes when you want them to say yes, who jump through hoops when you want them to, who accept your demanding expectations. You've surrounded yourself with people like that, and sometimes that'll come back to bite you. Sometimes the most valuable person on your team is the one who will not comply with anything you want. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes you need that pushback from somebody who's like, I'm not disagreeing with you for the sake of disagreeing with you, but I don't see it the same way you do. Can we try it like this? And in all honesty, sometimes those people are not going to be nearly as nice about that. Maybe nurture is not in their wheelhouse either. But if you want to be a great leader, especially with the new generations that are coming up now where emotion is on the surface long before thought is, learning to nurture, learning to deal with people, learning to care about people. Here's a hard one, learning to love people. John Maxwell has said for years, I don't even know if he originated the comment, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Have you demonstrated that you care? If you can do that, if you can bring all your skills and all your talents, all your ability, all your energy, all your fearlessness, if you can bring all that to bear on the next set of tasks, that's incredible. But if you can't do that while navigating and negotiating relationships with humans, there's going to be a cap. There's going to be a lid on your leadership. You're going to crash into it when you can't communicate with other humans and treat them like humans, not like servants. A rising leader has got to be like liquid metal. You've got to conform and adapt and change and transform in every environment. That doesn't mean to not be who you are. It just means to recognize where you are and conform yourself for the moment to that environment. And you may or may not be the top dog. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at